Welcome to First Connect with Lance and David. This is a Sunday to Sunday bridge that we use to try to build connections and relationships and that sort of stuff to talk about issues in the church, issues specific to our church and what's going on. And we're glad you guys are here with us this week. As we always start, Lance, talk to us a little bit about what's happening with your family this week.
Kind of on the home front with us. Had a great, wonderful time of appliance shopping this weekend. Yeah, we're looking maybe for a new refrigerator and don't like to categorize that as a major purchase in our life, but yay. So that's kind of where we're at. We spent a day doing that over the weekend, but a little more fun. On Friday, my son asked if he could take me out on our kayaks for the day. And so we spent the day on the river, out at Kings River, kayaking. Haven't been out there before, and we had a ball. We drug bottom at times because the water was down, but mostly we floated and had a couple of water hole spots to jump in and
good stuff,
and jump off the rocks a little bit here and there.
That's good.
So sunburns and all, we had a great time.
Good.
How about you? Homefront stuff.
Well, I could talk about my 2 visits to the DMV over the course of this last week, but here's the deal. We have a good time on First Connect, so I'm not going to talk about any of those kinds of issues. Instead, I'll get into this. We're continuing to get into our house. My parents have been real helps to us in that.
Yeah.
My dad has been building a couple of loft beds for our daughters to go into their room. I got to spend a couple of hours assembling. My parents call them Chester drawers. I think it's chest of drawers or something like that. Is that right?
But Chester, he's a good guy.
Chester. I love Chester's drawers.
Yes.
I got to spend a couple of hours assembling those things this Saturday. So that's one thing. Then we were out at my parents yesterday doing a little Father's Day cookout. So man, it's been this is a good weekend. Good weekend at the at the Powell House.
Yeah, Father's Day weekend.
Well, and with Father's Day, we put out a request last week, an email and up on Facebook to try to get as many Father's Day tribute videos from people as we could get, failing ourselves.
Yes, we did.
To pay any sort of tribute to our own fathers.
We did do our own
and so
video.
we thought, hey, we have a show. We should probably do that. So Lance, why don't you take a moment to talk about Mr. Brewer?
That would be awesome. Yeah. So my dad. My dad passed away back in 2013. Had Lou Gehrig's disease, and passed away, but. Just thinking back on him, and so when you're thinking back on a dad who's not with you anymore, you long for some things.
Sure.
And also, I was just thinking of some of the things that I really long for in him, and I hope that I can kind of live out as well. I thought about my dad being one of the conversations I had with him there in the last months of his life. Really, it sounds kind of awkward to say it, but you had to catch it in the context of it. My dad had a good humor about himself. As well. I asked him one time, Dad, so it was November before he passed away in April, and I just asked him, I said, Dad, so what are some of your thoughts as you think about, we'd had several conversations, so this kind of made sense, as you think about kind of end of life here for you. He just said real quick, I want to make it to January. That's a weird thing to hear out of your dad's voice, but in the context, we were all walking through him passing away early, and I said, well, why January? Well, there were some insurance things wrapped around his life and those kind of things that if he made it to January, he'd be able to pay off the house. And I just think about my dad, and in that moment, I thought, it just flashed through my mind years of how my dad was a provider, just provided, and wanted to do that for Mom, have that taken care of before he went on. Well, he made it to April and got to take care of some other things too along the way as well. But a provider for us. I thought about my dad as a connector. He loved just talking to people. Okay. I wouldn't say he was like a great conversationalist. He just liked to connect with folks, talk to folks. He did that with our with relatives. He wanted to hunt down relatives wherever they might be. Drove us crazy. Let's drive out of the way here. I think there's some relatives over here. Let's pop in and say hey to them. And all, but wanted to connect with folks, not just with relatives, with people as well. He was willing, Dr. Faulkner. Doug shared the other day in his message about his dad being willing to come at a moment's notice. Man, that resonated real well. That's
Absolutely.
a word that described my dad. He was willing to do not just for his family, not just for his boys, but for people. Somebody asked him, "Hey, you want to do this? Yeah, I'll do that. Will you help with that? Yeah, I'll help with that." No. So patient. He demonstrated for me patience. In life, and I even thought about that as a teenager. Sometimes as young teenage boys, and it was just my brother and I and dad and the mom in the house. So mom had to deal with 3 men all the time and things, and then 2 teenage boys with testosterone raging and think we know everything and those things. And I was no different as a teenage boy, thinking I know everything. And come on, mom, why are you? And mom happened to be kind of the one that cracked the whip to make sure the house was good and in order and taken care of. And it just seemed like at times mom had some unreasonable requests of us. No, and even I thought that's not very fair for her to expect that of dad. And dad always saying, "No problem. We'll take care of that. We'll do this." And just demonstrating patience. Mom wasn't unreasonable. That was just me being unreasonable. But Dad showing patience with his bride, with his boys in life, and just carrying things. And then lastly, I think of the word friendly. Kind of already described that a little bit, but just friendly. Friendly was a characteristic of him. And I was so thankful for that, especially with his grandkids, with my kids. Just how friendly and warm he was. They wanted to be able to be around him, those things. So blessed with a dad that was godly, and all those attributes came out of his relationship with God as well. So that's a little bit about my dad. I love him and do long to be able to connect with him again one day.
Yeah. So hey,
What
my
about you?
dad,
Your
Kirk
dad.
Powell, is here in this church. Kirk and Karen Powell, some
I
of you
know.
guys may know. I've just written down a few things here about him. The first thing I'd say about him is that my dad was and is a consistent man of his word. So there's no second guessing with my dad. He will follow through on what he says. Sometimes he might forget, it might pass out of memory, but if you bring it back in, absolutely. If my dad has said it, if he's given his word to it, he's putting his name to it, he's going to follow through. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same thing, similar thing to what you said with your dad. I would say my dad is one who struggles to say no. Because he will help pretty much anyone, and I could go. I mean, I could give you account of account.
That's good to know.
Of him with us, with his kids. But I don't want to. I won't worry so much about that. I want to think more about, especially days watching him growing up, where he was a deacon at our church there at First Baptist Benton. I remember a couple of accounts of a few guys. There was this one guy who was a little bit older than he was, and he was a, to my eyes, kind of a disheveled, a little bit older guy than my dad, named Frank, that for some reason we would give a ride home, like up into the mountains to like a trailer, basically areas where he lived. I didn't really understand it at the time. I thought it was, there's an interesting friendship that my dad had made, and I kind of got an idea later of what that actually was. That dad just taking care of people because he does that. I remember another guy pulling me aside at church one time, just wanting to affirm my dad in something he had just done. I think it was actually the pastor saying that my dad had gone to one of the shut-in men there who needed to be shaved, and he was willing to go and shave another man's face. Those kinds of things were kind of cool. A third thing about my dad is he's always affirmed me in my gifts and my passions. Dad and I are wired quite differently. We do different things. We're good at other things. He's awesome with his hands and building stuff, and like I can't even stand it. I'm terrible at it and don't enjoy it. I grew up with just hardwired towards sports, athletics, that kind of thing. Dad never really played a sport in his life when he was growing up, but he was always my primary practice partner and a coach and that sort of thing. In our terminology now, and he would stay in his lane. He knew that he didn't know everything about these, but David, this is what I'm seeing. Watching you over the long run, I see this, and you're kind of missing here. That was just awesome to have. My dad was a protector, like so many dads are, but we had a very clear rule in our house. Just one of many was I'm the middle child, 2 sisters. For me, girls, for the girls, guys, we were never ever. I was never to have a girl upstairs. My sisters never to have a guy upstairs. Upstairs is where all the children's beds were, and so we just that was in place among many other things. My parents together, they just sought to be protectors to us in all ways. Last thing I'll say is my dad has always taken initiative on my behalf because he knows me, recognizes some things about me. When I was graduating from college, there were some things I needed to change up about my graduation how my major was classed. I hadn't done it. I was trying to get started in seminary. They kept sending my transcript and it wouldn't get done, and I would not take it on myself to go get this taken care of. Yeah. So my dad got in his car from Oklahoma, took off to Arkansas, was on their doorstep until someone would talk to him to get this done. Like, Dad, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But he does those things because he's always done those things. Yeah. He saw like in me this tendency toward procrastination and sometimes indecision, and he wouldn't let me carry on with that. And so that's just a few things about
cool.
my dad.
Cool. We got to take a little moment. We took more than just a minute or two to share about our fathers because, hey, it's our show.
It is our show. We do what we want.
We're doing this. But we hope you enjoyed this video tribute. We showed it this past Sunday in worship, but wanted to be able to show it again of several of our church members giving tribute to their dads as well.
We love our dad for his cheesy dad jokes. Love you, Dad.
Love you, Dad.
I love my dad because he helps me dress Hattie, my baby doll, and he does great piggyback rides. I love my dad because he plays basketball with me and teaches me new moves like triple threat and he plays with me on games at home and practices at home.
I love my dad because he takes me fishing, he takes me turkey and deer hunting, and he also helps me make stop motion videos. And our dad is Clay Folks, and that's why he's the best.
Sorry. 1, 2, 3.
We're good. I want to see it.
You can do better.
My dad is lovable, caring, and he helps us become a better man.
I'm so blessed to have been raised by such a strong Christian man who is always present in my life. And I'm so thankful for all the time and energy and prayer that he poured into my life. So I would like to wish my dad a happy Father's Day. And I love you, Dad.
Hi, Dad. Happy Father's Day. I love you so much. I just wanted to reminisce a little bit on the memories we had going fishing together in the little boat and going to all those fun hockey games. I love you so much. Bye.
When I was a young adult, I was getting ready to go to college, and my dad was the one that was driving me to the airport to say goodbye. And on the way to the airport, there was a sign that said 2 flights going out of the state, which is where I was going, and then another airport exit sign. And I said, Dad, I want you to take the left. He said, what do you mean? I said, I don't want to go. I got cold feet. And he said, Lisa, you need to go. He said, I love you and I want you by my side always, but you're never going to grow if you do that. And so go and come back and I'll be waiting for you. And now I have 3 kids of my own who are adults, and one lives on the East Coast and one wants to live on the West Coast, and the youngest will probably live in another country. So by teaching me that, my dad was teaching me to let people go. If you let people go, then you really do love them and you don't want to hold them back. Happy Father's Day, Dad.
My dad is the best dad in the whole wide world.
Why?
Because he gives me shelter and he loves me.
My dad taught my 2 brothers and I the value of hard work. He helped us know what it means to love your spouse. He showed us the importance of being a faithful church member. And he taught us what it meant to be a follower of Jesus Christ. He did most of this by example, and he would use his words. He also had other means at his disposal if necessary. When I was a kid, my dad was our RA leader. Later in life, he often taught Sunday school, but he would never agree to be a deacon because he always said he wasn't good enough, something I and my brothers and all Dad's friends knew was patently untrue. And my dad never had a pastor he didn't like. My dad died 18 years ago, and not a single week goes by that I don't think about him.
My dad is cool, he's funny, he's awesome, and I just love him.
Our dad's so awesome. They are so wonderful. One of the things that most of us kids have in common is that we want to be pleasing to our fathers. We want his approval. And that is why one of the things that I love to hear my dad say, regardless of how old I am, is when he says, "I'm proud of you, kid." And with those 5 words, my dad gives me something that I will cherish for a lifetime.
When I think of my dad, I think of a man of integrity who, when he gave you his word, he was going to follow through with it. I think of a man who was a hard worker and was always willing to help a person in need, a person who was godly and read his Bible and prayed, told people about Jesus, wanted them to know Jesus as their Savior and Lord, and was willing to personally grow and to keep growing all of his days to be more like Jesus wanted him to be. I think of a man who loved me unconditionally and always supported me.
Delightful. A is for awesome. D is for dandy. We love you, Dad. Happy Father's Day.
We hope you enjoyed that tribute to some fathers here at First Baptist Church, and some great little tributes there.
Absolutely.
Anywhere from a couple of kids just saying, "Dad, thanks for your jokes. We love them."
Right.
I really appreciated all of those, but I thought about Bill Miller's comment there about his dad. He said several things about his dad, but when he said, "My dad has never had a pastor that he didn't like or didn't love," as a pastor, I really appreciate your dad there, Bill, on saying that. So I know he wasn't talking about me.
Yeah, I was going to make that joke, but I didn't.
I gotcha. He wasn't talking about me.
No,
what about you? Anything out of that?
Yeah. No, I when we were watching this yesterday in worship, I really, Lisa Faulkner's specifically really stood out to me when she was talking about this just poignant moment. I think they were in the airport, it sounded like.
Yeah.
She just wasn't ready to go. And her father stepping in saying, it's time. And the way that God has used her father, she says, I love a good testimony. Preparing her really for what's happening with their own family now.
Right now.
I thought that was a really cool thing to see.
It was wonderful.
Man, I ran across, we were doing a little research because Father's Day was yesterday. Yeah. Again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there.
Yeah.
So we were doing some research, getting ready for this because we wanted to talk some about fatherhood. And I ran across this infographic. I think I got this. I will put it out there somewhere. I think I got it from fathers.com or maybe it was fatherhood.org. A couple different websites I was looking at.
Okay.
And it just said this. It talked about the crisis that is fatherlessness in America right now. So this is always a difficulty in dealing with Father's Day, Mother's Day, recognizing for some it's the best of memories. For some, this is a really hard thing. Knowing that fatherlessness is a major deal out there. Okay. But I just wanted to use this infographic to talk about the importance of who fathers are and what they do and what they bring to their families. So catch this. So it says that there are almost 20, when this came out, 20 million children without their father at home in the United States, 20 million. And it says this, for those fatherless children, they're at a 4 times greater risk of poverty. They're 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teenager. It says they're more likely to have behavioral problems, and that's especially true of the boys. Okay. They're more likely to face abuse and neglect. They're at a 2 times greater risk of infant mortality, like actually dying. Yeah. They're more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. They're far more likely to go to prison. And in fact, I think I saw earlier, something like 90% of the prison population out there comes from fatherless homes. Yeah. They're 2 times more likely to suffer obesity. they're more likely to commit crime, and they are twice as likely to drop out of high school. All this centering around just one factor that's different. One factor.
Fatherless.
Whether the father is there present in the home or not.
Okay.
And this one wasn't even about necessarily the quality of the dad. We recognize that like there's some phenomenal dads and some are like, he's okay, but this is just the difference in having him or not having him puts him at that kind of difference, those kind of levels. That's a huge thing.
Yeah,
huge thing.
Yeah. So along that line, I had grabbed an article too from about 3 or 4 years ago out of the New York Times. That the title of the article was "Girls Need a Big Dose of Dad." Research links detached fathers and risk-taking daughters. And so again, that idea of detached fathers or absent fathers or fathers that just aren't as present there. And through the article, the research, a very secular perspective and study and research on dads that aren't present in their daughters' lives, that those daughters in particular, they are much more risk takers, dangerous risk takers, specifically in the area of sexuality, of expressing their sexuality and things. And so I thought it was interesting. The kind of the conclusion of their research. One of the researchers asked the question: what is it that dads do that shield their daughters from sexual risk? Because the numbers show that dad's there, the risk is down. But if dads are gone, the risk is up. And also they're asking, what are dads doing then that shelter them? And so another researcher in that same study, he answers the question. It's all about dosage of exposure to dads. The bigger the dose, the more fathering matters, for better and for worse. We talked about that. And so their conclusion is it's really of a moral drive from a secular viewpoint. Dads, be present, and the danger for your daughters goes down. Yeah. Be present. And all that. So I thought that was interesting, but it kind of begs the question, really? Just being present takes care of that. What in the presence really matters, though? As maybe what we ought to kind of point to as well.
Well, man, I was just thinking a little bit about what exactly does the Bible have to say about fatherhood, and so I mean, I just pulled a few passages. So the distinctive ones that'll always come to mind to me, for me and for a lot of others, are Deuteronomy 6 and Ephesians 6. Ephesians 5 on marriage, leading into Ephesians 6, managing your household. Where Ephesians 6:4, you'll read this: fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction, or I think people forever and ever would say, the fear and admonition of the Lord. Like if we were stepping back into the King Jimmy days.
Yes.
Bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. The book of Colossians is really similar to the book of Ephesians. It says this, so Ephesians, don't provoke your children to anger. Colossians 3:21, fathers, do not exasperate your children so that they will not lose heart. So there's this role that dads play in protecting their children's hearts, in protecting their emotions, in understanding their children. Do not exasperate them. So like I also pulled something here from Hebrews chapter 12 about the discipline that fathers render on their children. Knowing there's going to be difficulty in parenting, not all children are easy to parent and easy to guide and easy to manage. But we got to do it. But we've got to do it remembering these two things from Ephesians and Colossians: not provoking them to anger, and not exasperating them to the point that they begin to lose heart. And that can be a difficult balance to weigh. Deuteronomy chapter 6, you'll hear of this again and again and again as you hang around our church or at many churches these days. Deuteronomy chapter 6, inside of what we call the Shema, which just means listen. So listen, Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 through 9. These words which I'm commanding you today shall be on your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontals on your forehead. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Now, obviously, that's being written from an Old Covenant, Old Testament perspective, but the principle still carries for Christian parents, and specifically for Christian fathers, that God's Word and God's principles and His precepts, His statutes, His expectations, as well as the gospel, those good promises of God. We have a duty to keep those things in front of our children all of the time.
Yeah.
All around our house, in our conversation, as a regular part of just family life. And I'm just going to read one more little one here from Hebrews chapter 12, verses 9 through 11. It says this. So we had earthly fathers to discipline us. Apparently there's an expectation in the Bible that we will discipline our children. They disciplined us and we respected them. Shall we not much rather be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time as seemed best to them, but he disciplines us for our good, so that we may share his holiness. All discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful. You hear that, John Powell? John Powell, Nathan, Rachel, Anna. All discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful, but sorrowful. Yet to those who've been trained by it, afterward it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. So there's something to be learned even as we discipline our own children for them, in the way that they receive discipline for us prepares them, it seems, for the discipline of God as well, knowing that God is seeking to train them, conform them to who he wants them to become. So
now, I think as we share these, and that relationship between the father and their children, and the response, you're talking about the response of the children in that, it's not always joyful, it doesn't always feel good.
It doesn't, does it?
For sure. And then I begin to think of the old adage, that it kind of turns around the other way. As the parent is giving the discipline,
it's going to hurt me way more than it hurts you.
Way more than it's going to hurt you, in a sense. And then when you become the parent, you begin to realize that statement, what it means in your life, of the challenge of disciplining the kids. And I remember in those years, in the past 18 months of my dad's life, I was traveling every weekend back and forth to their house. So I'd leave on a Thursday night, get back on a Saturday usually, and then church on Sunday where I was serving at that point. And one time, one of the church members asked me, hey, how's your dad doing? What's going on? I mean, they knew the situation. And I said, well, this is what's going on. And I kind of just described where he was at physically. He's losing more of his functioning with his arms right now, but he's still able to talk and those kind of things. And the person, we had a good enough relationship. He just looked at me, he goes, man, it sounds like some things I'm doing. I don't walk as steadily. And he knew. Right. And I said, yeah, I get that. He goes, Lance, you can't get old and be a wimp. It's just not there. And that just hit. I needed that laugh. It just caused me to laugh. You can't get old and be a wimp. But that is translated for me is when it talks about disciplining, that you can't be a dad and be a wimp about it, because the scripture's clear that there's discipline that's involved. But I'm telling you, David, I remember as a young parent hoping that I would be able to handle the things of being a parent, of raising the kids right and doing some things there, knowing that there's going to be some hard decisions to make, and just providing for these little mouths and those things. And I remember saying, God, help me not wimp out on doing the hard things, and asking for that over and over. And the hard things I know was in discipline and really saying, when do I let something slide?
Draw
when
some
do I
lines.
not? When do I is this really worth it? Do I want to fight this battle or not? And just stepping up and doing those things and being consistent in that and telling the truth along the way.
That's good.
As well. So I don't know.
That's good stuff. Yeah. Well, man, I was just going to pull one more kind of strain of passages out of the Bible here. Yeah. And it's just on this idea of ritual and of tradition. I'm just struck by this statement that happens actually several times, especially in the Old Testament. So like in Exodus 13:14, on the redemption of all the firstborns, coming out of the Passover. It shall be when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what is this? That you shall say, with a powerful hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. Deuteronomy 6, when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what do the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments mean which the Lord our God commanded you? Then you shall say, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord brought us up from Egypt with a mighty hand. And one more in Joshua 4. This is talking about when the children of Israel are crossing into the promised land, they're going over the Jordan, the Lord parts the waters, and then they're commanded to bring stones up out of the Jordan and then plant them down. It says, those 12 stones which they had taken from the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal, and he said to the sons of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in times to come, saying, what are these stones? You shall inform your children, saying, Israel crossed this Jordan on dry ground. It just causes me to think about the power of ritual, the power of traditions, and like, especially these ones that God ordained for his people, so that he would set up these markers all over Israel. And they would have these various times of years, so all across space and across time, where things would be planted, where the children are going to see some. So the sacrifice of the lamb at Passover. Daddy, why are we doing this? And all of a sudden they step straight into that conversation. No, this is because the Lord saves his people. Daddy, what are these stones here off to the side of the road? Well, this. Like you were saying earlier when we were talking about this, these stones right here, those stones came out of that river when God caused his people to cross. You know, just using like the power of ritual to, just to foster belief, help our kids along. I think about the way we pass the plates with the offering. I think about seeing the ritual that is baptism, or maybe the one that hits the most here in the church is like is the ritual of the passing of the Lord's Supper plates that we have. I've got little kids, so I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old girl that are there with us in the pew, and it's inevitable when that plate comes by because they are not yet baptized members of this church. They ask, Daddy, what is this? Mommy, especially, Mommy, what is this? And there's that opportunity to explain, well, this is because we've trusted in Jesus for the forgiveness of sins. This is his body and his blood given on behalf of us. And just, I love the idea of ritual and tradition, not that we need to be bound to all tradition, and not that we become so ritualistic we forget the point of things. But I was just curious, did you guys have any kind of traditions inside of your own parenting, some of the things you guys have done with Austin and Kelsey, or does anything come to mind for you?
You know, I wish it was as profound as it seems in Scripture where I, had a little altar of stones in my backyard or something that really marked a significant spiritual growth event. Things, but I do think of, I've had I call it a privilege now. It really was a hassle early on for me. It's the way I thought about it, but then it became the blessing that God wanted it to be in my life, of me taking my son to school every day. So from about 5th grade on, through until he started driving himself, I drove him to school and dropped him off. And at first it was kind of like, well, I really, it kind of cramped my schedule in a sense. I kind of saw it that way. And then as I just kind of had one of those moments with God, I said, God, this is so frustrating. It just like he hit me. Lance, this is your opportunity to do these things of Scripture, to speak along the way. That it just wasn't much, these were a time when I had with him. I had alone with Austin, it was 5-10 minutes, sometimes 15. Get there to the school and all, and in a brief conversation we might have about something, I'd find out about his day, and before he'd hop out of the car, to pray for him, and all, which turned into praying with him over time. But to be able to pray for him, where that became his expectation, even in 9th grade and 10th grade, that he was like, okay, Dad's going to pray for me before I hop out of the car, and do that. That generated, I think, some questions at other times in life. I think another one where we would. The night before Sundays,
which is Saturday for those of you keeping score at home. Saturday nights.
If you want to get technical about it,
technically speaking,
that would be Saturday evenings. So those times when we would, whatever meal, whether we were eating out at a restaurant or we were having a meal at the house, and all, part of my prayer, that's not anything new to people. It's a ritual that lots of folks have in praying, don't forget. But the significant part was what I prayed for there was, God, tomorrow we're going to be at church. And would you, when the saints are gathered together, when your people are gathered together, would you do what you say you're going to do with the gathering of saints? And just kind of putting that perspective in why it's important that we gather together and spend time praying about that as well. That might ask some questions. There's a couple of little ritual things there. Maybe you got something
I was just going to say, so I'm from Central Arkansas. I grew up in Benton. So the standing rituals for most of the guys I grew up around would be like these experiences out in the deer woods, going off to deer camp, where apparently, again, we didn't grow up hunting really. But as I understand it, they would go off and not shower, for like 4, 5, 6 days, and just come back grunting and smelling like whatever, I don't know when they get back. But they have these experiences. For others, it's I see one guy down in Central Arkansas that it's like this kind of a ritual for them driving up the interstate, I guess up through East Arkansas to St. Louis to go catch the Cardinals every year. My buddy Justin Risley over at West Fork, I know it's a tradition for them to go and catch opening day, especially of like the Razorback baseball season.
Okay.
We've got, people build into their family schedules really rituals surrounding travel ball or gymnastics or swim team or whatever. And I just want to pose it as a question, as a challenge to our families out there, to us. Man, we're still early on in this journey. What will it look like for us to challenge ourselves, to carry our families along, to intentionally put things in our calendar, intentionally build into our schedules these little things that'll point us back to what we say is actually most important to us. The things that we say actually define us, and the things that we say that we're going to be about. But just as maybe a quick Father's Day challenge to you guys, especially to any dads. And I think more moms probably watching this than dads. But any of you moms watching this, you ask your husbands, or you have them watch this from a couple of dads out there struggling along to do this as well.
Yeah.
What are some ways that we can build some things in our family schedule that will help us do these sorts of things? Put things along the path that'll cause our children to ask these questions, at which point we get to come in behind and say, let me tell you about that. This is what the Lord has done. So, hey, know that we love you guys. We enjoy getting to spend this little bit of time with you, and we hope that today's episode of First Connect has been a blessing to you.
Take care.
We'll catch you next week.